The only way to start your day.
It's 10 after 8 o'clock, getting into the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. Nduoko here with you and Jesse Rogers, who's our guest host for today. CT then had an engagement, and then so we'll see him when he pops up again, right? So getting into a conversation this hour, it's a public participation conversation, and there are very many things that are happening. There are very many things afoot. But even as we get into that conversation, which we gave a little bit of a highlight to earlier on, I'm going to remind you of today's proverb. You should not be frightened by a python because of its length. The Ivorians came up with this. Coming out of Cote d'Ivoire is our proverb for this. You should not be frightened by a python because of its length. I'm just going to prefer that this is very apt for the conversation that we're going to be having this hour, in terms of what the problem is not how big or how grand a project is, that what it really means in terms of its possible dangers for you is probably what you should be more concerned about. What am I talking about? All right. The Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is not up for grabs. It's not up for grabs. And why am I saying that? Because we're probably already looking at a deal that has been inked. A lot of people have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about what is currently going on with the Adani deal and what it means for JKIA. Let's look at some of the facts before we ask conversations to be had. Let's look at exactly what is going on. And we look at some of these in the dailies today. Now, Adani Enterprises, which is an Indian conglomerate, has now set up a Kenyan subsidiary to push to take over the running of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport amid opposition among transport workers to the takeover by the Indian conglomerate. Okay, that we know. The flagship company of Gautam Adani's sprawling corporate giant incorporated airport infrastructure in Kenya on August 30th, according to a filing with the National Stock Exchange of India in Mumbai. So basically what they did was that in their papers of operation, they went and said airport infrastructure, essentially, and management is one of the things that we do. That also is fact. It is incorporated to take over, operate, maintain, develop, design, construct, upgrade, modernize, and manage the airport. This is according to the filing. So, whereas this may not have been one of the operations of the Adani Group before that, what we do not know, and it remains in the realm of speculation, is if after having been granted concessionary or a preliminary deal, they had to go back and say, hang on a minute, we need to make sure that within the tenets of our operation, that this airport handling and design and construction, etc., is amongst the things that we do. So they had to go then back and file that they can actually operate. So in India, that happened. They came back and said, actually, you know what? We can do 1, 2, 3. All right. That is fact. The Kenyan subsidiary was set up by the Abu Dhabi group called Global Airports Operator, itself a subsidiary of the Adani Enterprises, which will own 100% of the share capital. That is also fact. As part of the incorporation of the Kenyan company, Adani issued share capital of 6.75 million shillings, consisting of 6,750 shares at 1,000 shillings each. These things we know. Now, according to documents that we saw yesterday and other bits and bobs of information that we've gotten, it is very clear, it is of no secret now to anybody, that the infrastructure development of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport will be handed over to the Adani Group. And there is a flare-up of questions. When we saw this the first time, the questions were, hang on a minute, was there due diligence done in terms of bidding for the job? Was there a competitive process that was put into place so that firms would bid? The amount of money that we are talking about that this group is putting in to make sure that the airport then is upgraded and is operating. Kenya, is it that Kenya was not able to get that money? Because, again, if we look at the numbers, and I had to do the math over and over again to ensure that I'm getting it correct, Adani's financial proposal shows that $750 million will be spent on the development of a new terminal building, associated apron and taxiway system, and 2 rapid exit taxiways. This is expected to be completed by 2019. The money they're ponying up for this is $750 million, and that is almost 100 billion shillings. One of the questions, Jesse, is, does Kenya not have 100 billion shillings to be able to do this and maybe now hand the job over to a contractor? Why does it come with the predicate of you will then run? I'm going to read those words again.
Each one of them.
Take over is the first. Operate, maintain, develop, design, construct, upgrade, modernize, and manage. And this will be under their purview for the next 30 years. Remember, it is a restricted security area, as is for any nation, any state. Its airports are high security, and a lot of things come and go. Has there been enough public participation when it comes to such a thing? And everybody is up in arms at the moment. We have airport workers who are saying, what does this mean for us? Will we lose our jobs? It should be at the state and national. We know that it's going to Senate for them to ask these pertinent questions. That what does it really mean? Does it mean that you're handing over a piece of your sovereignty to this group, then who will do what they wish with your airport for the next 30 years? Or is it purely a commercial activity whereby we're saying we need the airport to operate at this level? We don't have the money. Somebody's ponying up the money, and so we're going to give them the operationalization of it for some time. Or is there more than meets the eye? And I think that's the question that's bothering everybody and has put everybody in a spot of bother right now. What is really going on?
And I think the devil is in the detail, because when you see the Kenya Aviation Workers Union coming out in their numbers, they've actually said that today's strike yesterday was just a test run. So they'll come out in their numbers today and plan to paralyze operations at the International Airport, JKIA. You might ask if this is a self-preservation move. Are they trying to secure their jobs? Because at the end of the day, when Adani comes and takes over for 30 years, what they're saying, according to the Workers' Union, the Aviation Workers' Union, that foreigners might stand to benefit more in terms of jobs. That's number one. Number two, I was listening to the leadership of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, and they had an issue with foreigners, and this points to the international airport being a key security installation. Currently, as we speak, there were foreigners who were taking photos of key security installation areas within JKIA, and some of these aviation workers had an issue with it. And remember, initially, when they announced an intention to put down their tools, one key issue stood out. The fact that they wanted to peruse the deal in terms of how Adani would take over, in terms of concessions and whatnot. And I think that's telling, as it is, that they weren't involved at the initial phase. So it's an egg on the face on the government in terms of ending how it should start. Because right now they're trying to put out a fire that is already out there. Yet they would have used the necessary procedures in terms of public participation. And we quickly heard from Senator Mungatana that, these PPPs, the public-private partnerships, of course, they might have good tidings and whatnot, but the process, it shouldn't be shrouded in secrecy.
Indeed.
Public participation is very important. And when you have workers' union coming out and saying, hey, there might be an issue here, it definitely shows that perhaps they weren't involved at the initial phase. So why shroud it in secrecy at the end of the day?
This is the thing. Historical lessons will show you that when something is secret, it's not out into the open, it is not transparent. The chances of you then being able to pin any kind of accountability to it then are lowered significantly.
True. And
that if truly this was for the development of Kenya from end to end, not just the dollars that are going to be splashed. Because, look, the $750 million that they're going to spend initially for the initial design is not all the money that they're going to spend. Let me just give you details about a little bit more. They're going to spend another $92 million, which would be used to improve the taxiway system, add 2 more rapid exit taxiways, and construct other related facilities such as additional remote aircraft parking stands. It is expected to be completed in 2035. It's also proposing to spend $620 million, which is another 79 billion shillings, on the development of new facilities, with the company adding that it will be done carefully to ensure seamless integration with the existing infrastructure. Now, like you say, the devil is in the details. And for such a key security installation, somebody has to ask the question that why would this happen? Because by the time this is out in the open, there has been a process. It didn't start just last month. Sure. These talks have been in place for a very long time. And so for something that is of such national interest, why was it kept quiet? Are there details of this that nobody knows? Who was responsible for making sure that, because from what we understand here, this has been inked. There have been signatures. There's been agreement. Why was it single sourced? Were there other people who had an opportunity to come and say, this is what we want to do as well? Was it given directly to one person? And if it was given directly to one person, why did that happen? And why did it happen in that manner? The issue of accountability and transparency is a big one. We saw that bulge, probably to the levels that we've never seen it before in June. But unfortunately, one would ask the question, and I almost heard the senator asking that we shouldn't be too suspicious about things like this when they happen. But unfortunately, sadly, that history has taught time and time again that when you see something that is shrouded in secrecy, there's usually something afoot. And you really wouldn't know anything about it until the dollars have been spent, until the ink has dried and the thing is gone. So, who was involved in the process of making sure that this thing is actually okay? And that these questions that we hear of security of jobs, security of a nation, a business from a commercial point of view is actually protected if the information was out in the open for everybody to consume in a manner in which they understood it, these questions would not come up. When you have speculation, it is because you've left a hole. And so people are going to fill it up with what they wish. If you don't give them the proper and accurate information in the beginning, they're going to fill those holes with what history has shown them before. And I think there lies a beautiful opportunity for you to tell Kenyans today, look, if we needed help to be able to upgrade JKIA, this is the way in which we chose to go. But if you choose not to say anything about it, and then you only start to, we have not even seen any explanation, but we only hear rumblings and murmurings of something when somebody leaked a document to somebody else, then there's a big problem. That the question is that you're so far from a place of accountability and transparency from government to its people when things like this happen that you have to backtrack and even remember where you are. It's a problem. It should be in the public. It should be in the open, in the middle of the day when the sun is high. Because unfortunately, this just does not work.
And you know, it's not just about self-preservation. When you talk about the workers' union coming out in dispute in terms of this Adani deal, because according to the union, they equally add that not just job security, they are that leasing the international airport JKIA to Adani might impose additional tax burden on Kenyans through increased airport charges. And this, of course, will ultimately increase the cost of doing air travel. And it's also proper to note that Adani is doing business. At the end of the 30 years, they will definitely be looking at their account books. And according to the information we have, the company wants to operate the airport for 30 years and transfer it back to JKIA at a value to be determined by the two parties, giving it an internal rate of return. What this IRR means in terms of financial analysis is just an estimate of profitability of the potential investments. So this particular group will be looking at a way that their profitability is guaranteed at 18% IRR. So this might come at the cost of a Kenyan taxpayer at the end of the day. So it's a whole issue.
It is.
Multiple layers that need to be canvassed adequately in good time so that transparency is at the forefront.
Top of the agenda, definitely. Okay, at this point, we're going to take a call from Moses Ndiema, who's the chair of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, and he's going to have that conversation with us. Moses Ndiema, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. My name is Moses Ndiema, not Moses, but yes, I understand many people confuse it for Moses.
Okay, sorry about that.
I'm the Secretary General of Kenya Aviation Workers Union, not the chairman.
Okay, so the Secretary General of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union, Moses Ndiema, on the line with us this morning, and we want to get a few insights from you. We have, a lot of the information is out in the public right now. We dare say that a lot of it is not quite sure exactly what is happening, but we do know that unions are already having an issue, and I guess we want to hear from you in terms of what matters arising could be and what it's going to look like over the next couple of days, Mos.
Okay, thank you. I think we are equally in the dark in a lot of issues surrounding the intended Adani takeover of JKIA. I like the last part of your comments when you say that the union is not just fighting for self-preservation. Indeed, we are not fighting for self-preservation. We are pursuing what we believe is on one part. These are labor rights that the government cannot be, negotiating with a third party on issues that would impact labor rights without our involvement. That is our first approach. Our second approach is, at the end of the day, we form part of the Kenyan citizenry. We are part of, the Kenyan population. We are Kenyans, other than being union leaders or workers. And so if there was a genuine attempt to invite an investor to come and invest at JKIA or any airport for that matter, or anywhere in this country, then what would be the process? What does the law say? I'm not a lawyer, but one thing I know is that Kenyans have a right to demand for openness and transparency. So on that one again, we join hands with the rest of Kenya and to demand that in a layman's language, if it is good for the country, let us know what is in it. Don't hide it. And number two, the law gives the union the right. The Constitution of Kenya gives the unions right to represent their their members. And so nobody should, infringe our space. To get into the specifics, nobody ever talked to us about this Adani thing until the acting managing director issued a press statement to the country. And I think he was prompted by, Kenyans who wrote directly to him demanding for information. That is when he responded and admitted to the fact that indeed Adani had presented to them a PIP proposal. That was an eye-opener for all of us. And we were like, okay, that was almost 3 months after they got the proposal. That's when we started the demand. Can we get that information? Can we look at that proposal? The willingness was never there until we issued a strike notice. That is when we had meetings with both the Minister of Transport and the Minister of Labor. And reluctantly, they offered to share with us an incomplete concession agreement that is still works in progress. They are still negotiating it, but of course on condition that we don't share it out. So I hope you'll not be asking me to share it with you.
Well, not at this point.
Yeah. So we are looking at it. We are reviewing it. It's not concluded yet, but still the fundamental thing is, what would be the justification to introduce an investor at JKIA, an airport that is making profits? I've gone on air. I've made a statement before, and I want anyone, be it KAA or anyone from the government, to controvert my position that between 2021 and 2023, the government of Kenya, through Treasury, collected 25 billion as profits generated from KAA. Now, when you have an airport that makes profits, in terms of billions of money annually, then we need to interrogate the justification as to why you want to introduce an investor whose first mandate is to take over the ownership of JKIA, the management and the running. It is very clear. My silly understanding of the whole thing about PPP or PIP proposal is to attract investment into the country. So what kind of investment is this that, in the words of Karua, we are gifting Adani? We are telling them, I think the statement is, we are unable to run JKIA. So please come and run it for us. That is a statement that we are making to the world. I wish we were talking about Adani coming to set up a terminal somewhere. KAA has a lot of land, almost 4,000 acres. Give them a portion as a contribution from the government and the people of Kenya. Let them set up, their own terminals, runways and all those things. Then they can begin charging. They can run. It's their investment. There can be that agreement that they will run it, own it, manage it for 30 years. But they had no investment in setting up JKIA. Why are we giving it to them?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. And then also, Ndema, a question would be, was KAU involved from the get-go? I'm not going to ask you what the document stated, obviously, because you're, held to some kind of secrecy on that. But were you involved in the process at any one point to say, look, this is happening, this is how it's going to pan out? And if not, then where do possible fears arise?
We were not involved. We have never been involved. After we issued the strike notice, there was an attempt to take us through in the gaze of stakeholder engagement. And what they had prepared was a 4-page, document, some slides. You can imagine, you're talking of, because from our own sources we know that these proposals and all the information around it ran into thousands of pages. You reduce that into 4 pages. You want to sit us down and take us through, and not to give us any real proposal or even the feasibility study, anything like that. So we declined. Honestly speaking, we said, give us the documents. If you think we will not read them, or we cannot read them and understand them, we will find someone to help us do it. So simply, we have not been involved. And our fear is this. Our fear now, from the union standpoint, is we are all aware that there's been information in both mainstream media and the social media that once Adani takes over JKIA, it becomes the owner and the manager of JKIA. Then every employee of KAA who is stationed at JKIA will have to terminate, or rather the employment will be terminated between that employee and KAA. Then the next step is, whether it will be for a minute, for a day, for a month, they will be jobless. Then they will apply for re-employment, or rather employment, by a new entity and a new employer now called Adani.
Okay,
then Adani will only
well
offer.
Noted, and we see the concerns right there. But 2 quick questions. First of all, you've just mentioned about a 4-page document somewhere. So briefly, yes or no, have you reviewed the lease deal? As simple as that. And then now the follow-up question, because I'll have to be the devil's advocate here, because we wouldn't want to throw the baby with the bathwater in terms of some of the positives that might come along with this Adani deal. So, from your point of view, with your understanding as aviation workers, we are trying to attract investment. That's the good side. But at what cost? What's the cost that Kenyans will have to pay for the next 30 years in terms of accepting to this deal?
For your first question, we are now in the process of reviewing the concession agreement. Remember, we got it on Thursday last week at around 5. Actually, yesterday is when we started work on it, so we've not made much progress. We have not, in short. Maybe by end of this week, we'll be having maybe some views, some opinion about it. 2, I contest the view that we are attracting investment. Which investment is that? Because from what we are learning, even in the media yesterday, if you remember, if Citizen ran a story yesterday where they are saying that it will take Adani up to 2029 to have a terminal. This is 2024. You want to run JKIA, collect the money, own it until 2029. So the question is that their money? Are we attracting any foreign investment in this case? So for me, I'm still at that, basic stage where I'm contesting whether indeed we are attracting anything, any investment from Adani. Why are they unable to set up a terminal without owning and running JKIA? Why?
Yeah, essentially,
why
because I think the question is most that why can't you come in as, even if it was an infrastructure consultant, if you're in the business of doing this, why can't you come in as a consultant, you do the work that needs to be done, you finish and you go? The issue of taking over, managing for the period of time, I think is what is bringing a lot of uncomfortability across board. That what does it actually mean when you give over the management of something so sensitive to an external party, putting so many other things on the line, whether it's speculated or otherwise, that why then does the management have to go over to somebody else for such a long period of time? Isn't that one of the major concerns that's going on here?
Correct. Perfectly put. That is our stand. We need answers to that question first.
What has been the response in terms of, obviously, I know you're going this morning to have some engagements around what would happen next, but what is some of the ask that says, look, we say, let this thing be transparent, let it be accountable, let us know exactly what is going on, or in the absence of that, Car will essentially down its tools?
Basically, what we are saying as Kenya Aviation Workers Union is that we will not embrace the idea of Adani running JKIA. We are at that point where we are saying, give us all the documents, we will review them. If indeed there are positives in this proposal, for example, there's evidence that here is an investor who wants to invest these billions of money to improve aviation sector, we will support it, except that it should not include the takeover of JKIA. That is basically what we are saying, without going into the nitty-gritties of do this calculation, do that calculation. Let me re-emphasize what one of the people there said, I don't know the name, that one of the things that Adani is proposing is to raise the levies. That is the charges at the airport. And it is simple reason that JKIA currently is making profits at a certain rate. Now you are introducing a businessman who must get his card. They must make money out of this. How are they going to make it? The easiest and the simplest way is raise the charges. Everything from rentals, landing fees, parking fees, everything will almost double up. So, in fact, it might make JKIA unattractive, actually, because then that cost will be loaded on the users, travelers, airlines. And in the long run, it can have a ripple effect on the ability of organizations or employers to improve terms of employment. Because at the end of the day, everybody's there to make money to make a business, not to run into losses. So if you look at it from that perspective again, we are afraid the entry of Adani
Indeed.
might spell doom. Yeah, it might spell doom.
Moses, we want to thank you very much for giving us those insights this morning. This is an extension of an invitation for you to actually come into the studio and have a conversation with us in the coming days. I know that you go for a presser this morning to further discuss some of these issues and then to hear what the coming days will look like. So again, it's an invitation for you to be here in the Situation Room to talk to us talk with us about some of these issues. And I'm guessing the answer to that is a yes or a yes.
Yes, I will come. I commit to come in the next, maybe even in the course of a week. I'll make time. I'll come.
Asante Sana, thank you very much. Moses Ndiema is the Secretary General of the Kenya Aviation Workers Union. Just looking to some of those Adani deal issues this morning. Asante Sana for being on the line with us this morning. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. We're going to take calls from you. Public participation, as outlined by the Constitution, doesn't block you off to certain spaces. This is one of the spaces that we can have that. And we'll take a break now and come back to hear from you in terms of what your thoughts are about this. What should happen in the push for accountability and transparency when it comes to matters as sensitive as this? Where does public participation lies? We'll take your calls when we come back after we take a look at traffic. Don't go away.